How to talk to toxic parents without losing yourself. Navigating conversations with toxic parents can feel like walking through a minefield. Their behaviors, whether manipulative, critical, or dismissive, can leave you emotionally drained, questioning your worth, or feeling trapped in a cycle of guilt and frustration. Yet, maintaining a relationship with them, even a limited one, may be necessary or desired for various reasons. The key is learning how to engage without sacrificing your mental health, boundaries, or sense of self. This essay explores practical strategies to communicate effectively with toxic parents while protecting your emotional well-being. Understanding toxic dynamics. Before diving into communication strategies, it's crucial to recognize what makes a parent's behavior toxic. Toxic parents often exhibit patterns such as emotional manipulation, excessive control, or invalidation of your feelings. They might guilt-trip you into compliance, criticize your choices relentlessly, or dismiss your emotions as unimportant. These behaviors can erode your self-esteem and make interactions feel like a battle. Understanding that their toxicity often stems from their own unresolved issues rather than your shortcomings can help you approach conversations with clarity and less self-blame. The goal isn't to change your parents, as their behavior is unlikely to shift without their own willingness to grow. Instead, focus on managing your responses and protecting your inner peace. This mindset shift empowers you to take control of the interaction, even when their behavior feels overwhelming. Set clear boundaries. Boundaries are the cornerstone of dealing with toxic parents. They define what you will and won't tolerate, creating a framework for healthier interactions. Start by identifying your limits. For example, if your parent tends to criticize your career choices, you might decide that discussions about your job are off-limits. Communicate these boundaries calmly and assertively, using I statements to avoid sounding accusatory. For instance, you could say, "I'm not comfortable discussing my career right now. Let's talk about something else." Enforcing boundaries requires consistency. Toxic parents may push back, testing your resolve with guilt, anger, or manipulation. If they cross a line, calmly restate your boundary and, if necessary, disengage from the conversation. For example, you might say, "I've asked not to discuss this. If it continues, I'll need to end our talk." Following through on consequences, like leaving or ending a call, reinforces that your boundaries are non-negotiable. Over time, this consistency can reduce their attempts to overstep. Practice emotional detachment. Emotional detachment doesn't mean shutting off your feelings. It means creating space between their words and your self-worth. Toxic parents often use emotional triggers to pull you into their drama, guilt-tripping you, for instance, with phrases like, "After all I've done for you." Recognizing these tactics as manipulation rather than truth allows you to respond without being consumed by their emotions. One effective technique is the gray rock method, where you respond neutrally, avoiding emotional engagement. For example, if your parent launches into a critical rant, reply with brief, non-committal phrases like, "I hear you," or "I'll think about that." This approach deprives them of the emotional reaction they seek, often de-escalating the situation. Pair this with deep breathing or mindfulness to stay grounded during tense moments, helping you maintain your emotional center. Communicate with clarity and calm. When engaging with toxic parents, clarity and calmness are your allies. Avoid reacting impulsively to their provocations, as this can escalate conflicts and leave you feeling powerless. Instead, prepare for conversations by anticipating their triggers and rehearsing your responses. For example, if you know your parent will bring up a sensitive topic, plan a neutral response or redirect the conversation. Use assertive communication to express your needs without aggression. For instance, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," try, "I feel unheard when I'm interrupted. I'd like to finish my thought." This approach keeps the focus on your experience, reducing the likelihood of a defensive reaction. If the conversation becomes unproductive or hostile, don't hesitate to pause it. Saying, "Let's continue this later when we're both calm," gives you an exit while maintaining respect. Prioritize self-care. Interacting with toxic parents can be exhausting, so self-care is non-negotiable. Before and after conversations, engage in activities that replenish your emotional reserves, such as journaling, exercising, or spending time with supportive people. Reflecting on the interaction afterward can help you process your feelings and identify what worked or didn't. For example, ask yourself, did I uphold my boundaries? How did I feel during the talk? This reflection builds resilience over time. It's also essential to seek external support. Friends, a therapist, or a support group can offer perspective and validation, reminding you that you're not alone. A professional, in particular, can help you develop tailored strategies for your specific situation, such as navigating guilt or rebuilding self-esteem damaged by years of toxic interactions. Know when to walk away. Sometimes, the healthiest choice is to limit or even end contact with a toxic parent. This decision is deeply personal and depends on the severity of their behavior and your capacity to cope. If interactions consistently leave you feeling worthless, anxious, or unsafe, it may be time to create distance. This doesn't always mean cutting ties completely. You might choose low-contact approaches, like limiting conversations to specific topics or meeting in neutral settings. If you decide to reduce contact, communicate your decision clearly and without blame. For example, I need some space to focus on my well-being, so I'll be in touch less often. Be prepared for pushback, as toxic parents may react with anger or guilt tripping. Stay firm and lean on your support system to reinforce your resolve. Conclusion: talking to toxic parents without losing yourself is a delicate balance of self-awareness, boundary setting, and emotional resilience. By understanding their behavior, establishing clear limits, and prioritizing your mental health, you can navigate these conversations with greater confidence and control. While the process is challenging, it's also empowering. It allows you to reclaim your voice and protect your sense of self, no matter how toxic the dynamic. With practice and support, you can engage with your parents on your terms, fostering a relationship that aligns with your well-being rather than undermining it. How to talk to toxic parents without losing yourself. Navigating a relationship with a toxic parent is a delicate and often painful tightrope walk. The desire for a connection, for their love and approval, is deeply ingrained. Yet each interaction can feel like a psychological battle that chips away at your sense of self. The challenge is not simply about communication. It's about learning how to engage without being consumed by their negativity, manipulation, and criticism. To talk to a toxic parent without losing yourself requires a strategic approach built on a foundation of self-awareness, firm boundaries, and emotional resilience. The first step in this process is to understand that you cannot change them. Toxic parents are often deeply entrenched in their patterns of behavior, which are frequently rooted in their own unresolved trauma or personality disorders. Attempting to fix them or make them see the error of their ways is a futile exercise that will only lead to frustration and emotional exhaustion. The goal, therefore, shifts from changing them to protecting yourself. This reframing of the situation is crucial for maintaining your sanity. Instead of entering conversations with the hope of a breakthrough, you enter with the intention of holding your ground. Establishing and enforcing clear, non-negotiable boundaries is the cornerstone of this protective strategy. This means defining what you will and will not tolerate. For example, you might decide that you will immediately end a phone call if they start a conversation with a critical remark about your life choices. You might also set a boundary about not discussing certain topics, such as your finances or romantic relationships, because you know those conversations will inevitably lead to judgment. When a boundary is crossed, the response must be swift and consistent, not out of anger, but out of a commitment to your own well-being. A simple, firm statement like, "I'm not going to continue this conversation if you speak to me that way," followed by disengaging, reinforces the boundary and teaches them that their behavior has consequences. In addition to setting external boundaries, it is vital to create internal ones. This involves managing your own emotional reactions and expectations. Toxic parents often specialize in pushing your buttons, exploiting old insecurities and guilt. Learning to detach from their words and actions is a powerful form of self-preservation. This doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent, but rather refusing to internalize their negativity. When a toxic parent makes a disparaging comment, instead of thinking, "They're right, I'm a failure," you can practice observing the comment for what it is, their projection, not your reality. Techniques like mindfulness and cognitive reframing can be incredibly helpful here, allowing you to acknowledge the pain of the interaction without letting it define your worth. Furthermore, managing conversations with a toxic parent often requires a different communication style. Instead of getting drawn into emotional arguments or defending yourself against their accusations, practice using the gray rock method. This involves making yourself as uninteresting as a gray rock by giving short, factual, and non-committal answers. When they ask a probing or manipulative question, a simple, "I don't know," or "that's just how it is," can effectively shut down the opportunity for a long, drawn-out conflict. This method denies them the emotional fuel they thrive on and prevents you from getting ensnared in their drama. Ultimately, the most important aspect of talking to a toxic parent without losing yourself is the recognition that your well-being is paramount. It's an act of self-love and self-respect. This journey may lead to difficult decisions, including reducing contact or, in some cases, going no contact for a period of time. These are not failures of a relationship, but rather a recognition that some relationships are simply too damaging to your mental and emotional health. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Talking to a toxic parent successfully means accepting that a healthy relationship with them may not be possible, and finding peace in the knowledge that you have done everything in your power to protect your own heart and mind. Of all the relationships we navigate in life, few are as complex and emotionally charged as the one with our parents. When that relationship becomes toxic, characterized by manipulation, criticism, negativity, or a lack of respect for boundaries, the simple act of communication can feel like walking through an emotional minefield. The desire for connection wars with the need for self-preservation. The challenge, then, is not to change them, a feat rarely accomplished, but to learn how to engage without surrendering your peace, your perspective, or your sense of self. This essay outlines a framework for talking to toxic parents while fiercely protecting the person you have worked to become. The foundational step in this process occurs long before any words are spoken. It is an internal shift, from seeking validation to setting intentions. Toxic dynamics often thrive because we continue to hope that our parents will finally see, understand, and approve of us. Letting go of this hope is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of liberation. Instead, before any interaction, ask yourself, what is my goal for this conversation? Your goal cannot be to make them understand or to get them to admit they were wrong. These are outside your control. Valid goals are to state my boundary calmly, to share a piece of my life without needing a specific reaction, or simply to get through dinner without engaging in an argument. This reorientation places your worth and success in your own hands, not theirs. With this new internal compass, the next crucial element is the deliberate establishment and enforcement of boundaries. A boundary is not an ultimatum or a punishment. It is a clear, non-negotiable rule for how you expect to be treated. It is the difference between saying, "You're a jerk for insulting my career," which is an attack, and saying, "If you continue to speak disrespectfully about my job, I will end this conversation." The first is about controlling their behavior. The second is about controlling your own. Effective boundaries are clear and specific. I am not willing to discuss my weight with you. Enforceable. You must be prepared to follow through. If you bring it up, I will change the subject. If you continue, I will leave. Non-jargony. Avoid therapeutic language that might be used against you. You're being a narcissist. Stick to simple, factual statements about your actions. This is where you truly protect yourself. Following through on a boundary may feel harsh, but it is the primary mechanism that teaches others how to treat you. During the conversation itself, employ communication techniques that de-escalate and deflect toxicity. Gray rocking is a powerful method for responding to provocative comments or prying questions. It involves becoming as uninteresting and unresponsive as a gray rock, giving boring, non-committal answers that offer no emotional ammunition. To a probing, "When are you going to get a real job?" Instead of a defensive explanation, you might reply, "I'm exploring my options right now." This technique neutralizes the drama the toxic person may be seeking. Similarly, learning to detach with love, or, if love is too fraught, with neutrality, is vital. This means consciously refusing to absorb the negative emotions they are projecting. See their criticism not as a truth about you, but as a reflection of their own anxieties, insecurities, or unhappiness. This emotional distance allows you to observe the comment without letting it define you. A simple, calm, "I hear you," or "that's your opinion," acknowledges you heard them without agreeing or launching a counterattack. Finally, the single most important practice is consistent self-care before and after contact. Conversations with toxic parents are draining. Prepare yourself by grounding yourself in your truth. Spend time with supportive friends. Engage in activities that make you feel confident and reaffirm your values. Afterwards, decompress. Process your feelings with a therapist, a trusted friend, or through journaling. Do not ruminate on their words. Instead, consciously reaffirm your own narrative. This ritual creates a protective buffer around your psyche. Talking to toxic parents without losing yourself is not about winning a debate. It is the quiet, steadfast work of choosing yourself. It is the practice of showing up not as a pleading child seeking approval, but as an adult setting the terms for their own well-being. It is understanding that you cannot control their behavior, but you have absolute sovereignty over your response, your boundaries, and your emotional space. By shifting your goal from changing them to protecting yourself, you reclaim the power in the relationship. In doing so, you affirm that your sense of self is no longer negotiable.